Welcome back to We Up Talk. Dave and Steve here with you.
Hey, hey.
And it's always good to have a conversation with the Reverend Dr. Alan Bean, the Executive Director of the Friends of Justice. This is a Social Justice Thursday, Steve.
Yes, it is.
Because on the phone with us now we have Congressman John Lewis. Congressman Lewis, it is an honor, sir, to have you with us today on We Up Talk.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted and very pleased to be with you today.
And we are excited about the fact that you're going to be here in Huntsville on Saturday, down at the Huntsville Public Library, the downtown branch, speaking. And we want to talk to you about some of the things you'll be talking about and about some civil rights history. But as a journalist, I would be remiss if I did not ask you at least one current events question. You may be aware of the fact that Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks has submitted some legislation to the House. He's proposing a bill titled H.R. 371 that is calling for the impeachment of the president if Congress does not pass a balanced budget. Have you heard of this bill? Have you heard of any talk about this bill?
Yeah, I have not heard that much, but I have heard some discussion, just a minor discussion, that there is a move in the state of Alabama on the part of some of the legislators, I guess just one person. But I don't think that's going to go anyplace.
Okay.
I just don't put that much in it. This president is not going to be impeached. His polling numbers are at an all-time high.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it seems to me, and I think my co-host Steve Murray and we agree with you on that. But I also think this is really just a bad piece of legislation. Doesn't it ignore some of the political and logistical realities of even having a budget passed? If the onus is placed on the president?
It is very difficult in this environment.
Mm-hmm.
There has been a deliberate, systematic effort on the part of some people not to let this president succeed. From day one, when we were first elected and took office 4 years ago, and it's still an ongoing effort to hinder and stop everything that President Barack Obama attempted to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, Congressman Mo Brooks is certainly a part of that contingent that is doing that. But it seems to me that it's problematic also because, quite frankly, the president isn't the only one who has a say in what happens in the budget process. And so I find it strange, well, not strange because I know he's got a political agenda, but I find it, I guess, a little short-sighted to think and shallow thinking to think that you can craft a bill that places the onus for the success of a balanced budget solely on the shoulders of a president.
No, I think it is. It's very misleading. It is the responsibility of the Congress, both the House and the Senate, to pass a budget. The president doesn't have a vote in the House of Representatives or in the Senate. It's our responsibility, our obligation to pass a budget and put it into law and send it to the president.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, that's what I was thinking. So, Steve, I guess we'll just move on now that we've got the civics lesson out of the way for Congressman Brooks. We'll just move on now to a civil rights discussion.
Yeah, he needs a civics lesson.
Yeah, I think he does. I think he does. So, I know that when you come here on Saturday, you're going to be talking about civil rights and particularly, I'm sure, what happened on Bloody Sunday. Can you recount for folks who may not have heard you talk about this before just what happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge in March of 1965?
Well, almost 48 years ago, and this March will be 48 years ago, a group of us on March 7, 1965, attempted to walk from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama in an orderly, peaceful, nonviolent fashion to dramatize to the state of Alabama, but also to the nation, that people of color were being denied the right to register to vote. A young man by the name of Jimmy Lee Jackson in Marion, Alabama, the hometown of Mrs. Coretta Scott King, had been shot and later died at a local hospital in Selma. And there had been a series of peaceful nonviolent protests there. And he tried to protect his mother during a confrontation. He was shot and died. And because of what happened to him, those of us in Selma, in Wilcox County, and surround Lowndes County and other counties near Marion and near Selma, decided to march from Selma to Montgomery. And we crossed the bridge. We were walking in an orderly, peaceful, nonviolent fashion. We came to the highest point on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Down below, we saw a sea of blue, Alabama State Troopers. And we continued to walk until we came within hearing distance of the State Troopers. And one of the State Troopers spoke up and said, "This is an unlawful march. You will not be allowed to continue. I give you 3 minutes to disperse and return to your church." Jose William, working on Dr. King's staff, walking beside me, we were the two leaders of that attempted march. Jose said to the major, "Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray." And the major said, "Troopers, advance." You saw these men putting on their gas masks. And they came toward us, beating us with nightsticks. Beating us. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick. I had a concussion at the bridge. I thought I was going to die. I thought I saw death. And they released the tear gas. They trampled us with horses. 48 years later, I don't remember how we made it back across that bridge. I thought I saw death. I thought I was going to die. But somehow, somebody or some group took me back across the bridge to the church. And I remember being inside of the church, more than 2,000 people on the outside, hundreds and hundreds of people trying to get in. And someone asked me to say something, and I stood up and said something like, "I don't understand it, how President Johnson can send troops to Vietnam, but can I send troops to Selma, Alabama?
Wow.
Protect people who desires to register to vote." And the next thing I knew, I had been admitted to the Good Samaritan Hospital with 17 other individuals.
You know, that day is one that resonates with many of us who have been students of the civil rights movement. And I have to be honest with you, sir, as Steve and I have listened to you recount this today in your own words, in your own voice, the one question that comes to my mind is, how could you have survived that without harboring hate in your heart for your attackers?
Well, I grew up south of Montgomery, outside of the town of Troy. And when I was 15 years old, I heard about Rosa Parks. I heard the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the radio. And in 57, at the age of 17, I met Rosa Parks. The next year, in 1958, at the age of 18, I met Martin Luther King Jr. And I committed myself to the way of love, the way of peace, the way of nonviolence. And I began to accept nonviolence as a way of life, as a way of living. So in spite of the beatings there on the bridge, in spite of the beating in Montgomery during the Freedom Rides and 40 arrests during the 60s, you come to the point where you say you're not going to hate. And as Dr. King would say, hate is too heavy a burden to bear. You're not going to become bitter. You're not going to become hostile. You're gonna keep the faith and keep pushing and pulling and keep working to do everything possible to end the disparities, end segregation, end racial discrimination, and make America better, make America different. And that's what I've been trying to do for more than 50 years.
Do you feel that your work, when you look at some of the things that have happened since the election of our current president, Barack Obama, when you look at especially some of the actions, well, you yourself, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, indicated that you were walking past a Tea Party demonstration and someone spit on you, I believe, or
Well, it spit on one of my colleagues.
oh, spit on one of your colleagues. Okay.
Right, but people call us names.
Mm-hmm.
They taunted us, but one of my colleagues, a young minister, who was a member of Congress, he was harassed. And people bet on him.
Mm-hmm. So when you see these sorts of things reemerging, things that clearly have a racial connotation, and I'm not indicting all of the members of the Tea Party, but certainly some of them. Some people who affiliate with the Tea Party have clearly demonstrated a bigoted, racist bent. When you see that, does it make you feel that your work has been in vain, or does it dishearten you that we seem to have entered into a new cycle and era of racism?
Well, it troubles me a great deal to see signs and symbols of racism, that it still exists. We're not there yet. We have not created the beloved community. We have not yet created a post-racial society. And I say over and over again, and people ask me sometimes whether the election of President Barack Obama is the fulfillment of Dr. King's dream. I said, no, it's just a down payment.
Mm-hmm.
The down payment.
Mm-hmm.
We still have a lot of work to do. When a member of Congress can sit in the chambers and say in an open meeting and millions of people watching the president speak, and someone said to the president, "You lie."
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
I have never, and I've served with many presidents. I've served with President Reagan. I've served with Bush 1, President Clinton, Bush 2, and now with President Barack Obama. But I have never seen a president treated like this president has been treated.
Mm-hmm.
So it says something about our society. It says that the scars and stains and symbols of racism are still deeply embedded in American society.
Yes, sir. You know, I'm glad you made that point, because I was just thinking, Congressman and Steve,
Mm-hmm.
that when former President Bill Clinton was deeply immersed in this scandal with Monica Lewinsky and so forth, even then, as much as vociferous as the accusations were and the feelings were about President Clinton, when President Clinton stood up in an official capacity as president, nobody shouted out to him, "You're an adulterer," or "You're a liar," or "You're a this or that." Nobody disrespected the office that way. I think you're exactly right. That there's a racial component that of bigotry that has empowered some of these people to disrespect President Obama in ways that they didn't even disrespect Bill Clinton.
Well, there, in my estimation, in America at this point, at this time, that people who cannot adjust to the fact that a person of color, that an African American is president of the United States, and people got to learn to embrace it. It's a different world.
Mm-hmm.
America is a different country.
Mm-hmm.
It's black, it's white, it's Latino, it's Asian American, it's Native American.
Mm-hmm.
People got to learn that we're one people, we're one family, we're one house. The American house, the world house. We got to learn to live together, as Dr. King would say. And if not, we're going to perish as fools.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. This is We Up Talk, Dave and Steve. We are honored to have on the phone with us Congressman John Lewis of Georgia. He's an Alabama native, and he is a civil rights icon. We are very pleased and honored to have you with us today, sir. I wanted to ask you about the civil rights movement from this perspective. Because the civil rights movement embraced, as you said earlier, nonviolence and peaceful resistance, America was changed. But do you think America would have changed without the civil rights movement embracing that? Let's just say if instead of peace and love and and that sort of more spiritually centered approach taking the lead if instead Black Power had taken the lead? Do you think America would have changed?
Well, eventually, I think we would have made some changes, and some, no doubt, would have been major and meaningful, but we wouldn't be where we are today. Mm-hmm. We would be much more divided, and there would be a great deal more sense of racism and outright bigotry and hatred. But because we use the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence, it has changed a lot of people. And I give you one example, just one example, but there's many. When I was beaten on the Freedom Ride in May of 1961 and left bloody and unconscious in a little town called Rock Hill, South Carolina, it's the same year that President Barack Obama was born. In '09, one of the people who had beaten me came to my Washington office with his son and said, "Mr. Lewis, I'm one of the individuals that beat you. I want to apologize.
Wow.
Will you forgive me?" He started crying. His son started crying. And I said, "I accept your apology, and I will forgive you." And he gave me a hug. His son gave me a hug. I hugged him back, and we all cried there for a while. And since then, I've seen this gentleman 4 more times. He called me brother, and I called him brother.
That's
now, if we had been fighting,
Mm-hmm.
if we'd been using weapons, we wouldn't have had that. Mm-hmm. And I tell you, the lesson that Dr. King taught us and others taught us have been a lesson for America and a lesson for the rest of the world. That somehow, in some way, through the way of peace, the way of love, the way of nonviolence, you can create that sense of community. That's what the movement was all about, to be reconciled. So when Obama was elected, when President Obama was elected in November '08, I cried over and over again. There were tears of joy and happiness. And a reporter came down from New York and to interview me, and he said, "We noticed you were crying so much. So what are you going to do when he's inaugurated?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, if I have any tears left, I'm going to cry some more." and that's exactly what I did. I was crying tears of joy and happiness, but also feeling for those that suffered and struggled. The Fuller girls in Birmingham, but Dr. King and Rosa Parks and President Kennedy and President Johnson and Robert Kennedy and the 3 civil rights workers, for Medgar Evers, and for many hundreds and thousands didn't live to see what happened. And it's very gratifying and meaningful to see the distance we have come. Not just the election of an African-American president, but when I go back to Troy, I wanted to attend Troy State, not Troy University. Mm-hmm. And after I got elected to Congress, they invited me back, gave me an honorary degree at commencement time in 1989, and I'm going there and speak in a few days as part of African American History Month.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Mm-hmm. Sir, if you have time for one more question, I just wanted to ask you about the case that is now before the Supreme Court, Shelby County versus Eric Holder, a case in which the county of Shelby County here in Alabama is seeking to have Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act nullified because they're saying that it is no longer needed. Can you share your position on this case and on Section 5 and the need for that section to still be in existence, if that is how you feel?
Well, Section 5 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act is the heart and soul of the Voting Rights Act. If it hadn't been for Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, we wouldn't have as many African American, Latino elected officials and many of the progressive white officials we have today in the South and 11 states of the old Confederacy from Virginia to Texas. Section 5 is still needed today. It is needed now more than ever before. Because there is a tendency, there is a danger of certain counties, certain states, certain towns and cities moving back to another period. Mm-hmm. And members of the Congressional Black Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, the Asian American Caucus, and the great majority of the Democratic Caucus and scholars and political scientists all over America support keeping Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Mm-hmm. It says in effect that before you can change any political subdivision, a change, whether it's at-large election, a single district, you must get the approval of the district court in Washington, D.C., the Department of Justice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned that this Supreme Court, this configuration of the Supreme Court, will in fact rule Section 5 unconstitutional?
I'm deeply concerned. I worry about it, and I've spoken out about it. Matter of fact, I'm filing an amicus brief to state my position before the Supreme Court, and the several other organizations and caucuses within the Congress are supporting, maintaining, and keeping Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. I'm worried. Mm-hmm. It will set us back for many, many years to come.
Yes, sir. We agree with you, and we're worried as well. But I'm glad that you're still on the front lines today, standing for justice, social justice, and civil rights. Congressman John Lewis, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, it is our pleasure.
Congressman, could I ask you a question?
Yes.
Now, have you been to Huntsville before?
Oh, I've been to Huntsville before. I've been on Oakwood College campus and Alabama A&M campus, and yes, I've been there quite a few times.
Great.
Okay, and do you remember a gentleman by the name of Hank Thomas?
Yes, by all means.
Okay. All right. We've been trying to contact him because we're doing a series for Black History Month, and we were just
on the Freedom Rise.
Yes.
Yeah, Hank. We were on the Freedom Rise together. He was one of the original 13.
Right.
I don't have a number before me, but I can try to find the contact number and maybe give you a call.
Okay, that would be so wonderful. We really would appreciate it, and it's really been a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Well, good to talk to you. Hank lived in Metro Atlanta, and he attended Howard University. He originally from St. Augustine, Florida.
Oh, okay.
He was 19 years old on the Freedom Ride.
Wow.
Congressman, if it's not too much trouble, what you could actually do is, if you don't mind, and if it's not too much trouble, you could actually have Jacob email me Mr. Thomas's number.
Okay.
If you don't mind doing that.
No, I don't mind it.
Fantastic.
Okay.
We appreciate it, Congressman. Thank
you very much. Have a good evening.
Yes,
all
sir.
Right,
you
too.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, Congressman John Lewis.
Wow.
Now that's
history, man.
That is history.
Yeah.
And thank you because I saw that text you sent me earlier, and I didn't understand what you asked because I was like, "Who's Hank Thomas?" So thank you for remembering to ask him.
Hank Thomas played a significant, a huge role in the movement here in the Tennessee Valley.
Okay.
In fact, he was spent a lot of time up on the campus of Alabama A&M and Oakwood College talking to the students and getting the students involved in the movement.
Very cool. Well, let's hope the Congressman can find his number, and then we can get him on the air.
That'd be great.
Fantastic. All right, I guess we should take a break now.
Yeah, got some traffic coming up.
All right, fantastic. With Carmen Hope Thomas, This is Talking Gospel 94.5 FM, AM 1700, streaming on WEUPAM.com.